Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Just a reminder, we are live on YouTube and we'll get started here in about a minute. I will begin recording in less than a minute. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good morning, Lauren.
Good morning. Hello.
You just missed that we are recording, so recording is in progress.
Thank you.
Okay, by my watch, we have 9 o'clock, so I'm gonna go ahead and open up the meeting. If you all were expecting Stuart Harris, this is not Stuart Harris, this is Drexel Harris. And Stuart had another obligation, so he asked me to step in. And so I will step in and bring the meeting to order. Before I go any further, are there any public comments? I don't believe we have anybody, but is there any public comments?
Mr. Chair, we did not receive any public comment as of 5 p.m. yesterday.
All right, thank you. The package was sent out. Well, before I get to that, let's do introduction. I think everybody knows everyone, so if you can briefly state your name and organization and role, and I'll call you to do it so that we won't have people walking all over. So, Bill Bowman, you're still on mute.
There we go. Ed Bowman, I'm the president of W.E. Bowman Construction, and I represent the Associated General Contractors of Virginia, a commercial construction trade association.
All right. Suzanne Mallory Parker.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Suzanne Malloy Parker. I'm retired arts administrator in Chesterfield County and retired twice.
Okay.
This time for real.
I'm gonna go through everybody. So Kevin Raleigh.
Morning, I'm Kevin Riley with the CTE Resource Center, and I'll be taking the minutes today.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. All right, Sharon Parmere.
Plymire, that's okay, Stuart.
Okay.
Or I'm sorry, Drexel. Anyway, my name is Sharon Plymire. I'm with the Virginia Department of Transportation, Civil Rights Division. And I work with the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program in finding opportunities for disadvantaged business enterprises to work with VDOT.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Lauren Sodell.
Good morning, Lauren Sodell with the Commonwealth Center for Advanced Manufacturing and also Virginia State University College of Engineering and Technology.
Okay, thank you, Lauren. Dr. Eschman.
Good morning, everyone. David Eschman, Director of Workforce Development and Initiatives at the Virginia Department of Education Office of CTE.
Okay, George Wilcox.
Morning. George Wilcox, Director of Operations and Accountability, Office of Career Technical and Adult Education. And I'm working to get our speaker online, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. All right, Dr. Long.
Good morning. Sorry I'm late. Brenda Long. I am the liaison to the CTE Advisory Committee, and I'm the Executive Director for the Virginia Association for Career and Technical Education.
Thank you. Sakina Stevens.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Sakina Stevens. I'm a federal law enforcement officer, and I represent the federal law enforcement and police, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Stevens. Tamika Dowling, or Dr. Tamika.
Thank you, Drexel. My name is Tamika Dowling. I am a professor and director of baccalaureate programs at University of Virginia School of Nursing.
Okay, did I miss anyone? Okay, we had the meeting notes set up before the meeting, and so from the last meeting on April 15th, did everyone have a chance to review those? Are there any comments, corrections?
Move we approve the minutes.
Okay, thank you. That's from Bill.
Second, Lauren.
Okay, thank you, Lauren. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed? All right, the meetings are approved. George, I know you said you was working on bringing in the speaker.
Yes, she should be here in just a minute. She did not receive the link.
Okay. And do we have a presentation for her, or she has it?
Yes, she will bring it up. She should be
Okay.
online in just a couple of minutes.
Okay, thank you. Well, while we're waiting on her, I want to thank you all for joining this morning and for being a part of the advisory board or a part of the staff to support CTE. So appreciate that. She comes up as George, but that's not George there. So that's Catherine. Is that Catherine?
Yes, I'm not sure why. It must have something to do with the link.
Okay, no problem. So Catherine, thank you. We just got started. We just completed the introduction and approved the minutes. So if you could provide a brief introduction of yourself, and then you're up for your presentation.
Great, thank you very much. Again, I appreciate you inviting me to present here today. And my name is Catherine Crespin, and I'm a research consultant presenting today on behalf of the Center for Economic and Policy Studies at the University of Virginia. And George has asked me, I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen if I'm able to do that. Let's see.
Okay, we can see it.
Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So at the last meeting, I presented information to you about Virginia's maritime industry using this framework of industry sectors and subsectors. And after that meeting, George asked me to start exploring how we might be able to use this information to start conceptualizing what a maritime industry instructional framework might look like. And so one of the, with any research project, one of the first steps in the research process is to scan what information is already out there. And in scanning what content, what curricular content related to the maritime industry is currently incorporated into existing curriculum, I found that this industry sector framework holds up pretty well, actually, in terms of serving as a general outline for how an instructional framework might shape up if such an instructional framework were to be developed. So I'm going to use this today to guide and guide the presentation, basically to serve as a framework for for this discussion. And so I'd like to start with the ship and boat building repair and maintenance sector. And it consists of two subsectors: shipbuilding and repair, and recreational boat building and repair. And these two subsectors within the larger sector basically are slightly different in terms of the shipbuilding and repair subsector really relates to the construction and maintenance of vessels that are designed for deep water use, that are able to operate independently for long periods of time. And when we're talking about recreational boat building and repair, we're really talking more about construction and maintenance of vessels for leisure activity in inland and coastal water bodies, such as for recreational fishing, cruising, and water sports. Now, you can see here, what I've done is shown you some occupations within these, both subsectors actually, within the greater sector of ship and boat building, and shown you which career clusters and pathways they are aligned with. So another step in my research process involved finding out what the top occupations are in each of these industry sectors and subsectors to get a better understanding about A, what skills are required of workers in these sectors, and B, how well does this information overlay onto the CTE career cluster framework, both of which are obviously very important in relation to shaping up a curricular framework. So to do this, I examined data in the Bureau of Labor Statistics Industry Occupation Matrix. This enabled me to understand two things. One, what occupations make up the greatest part of an industry, and two, what industries make up the greatest part of an occupation. So those are two different things. But by looking at both of those, you can get a pretty good idea about what some of the top jobs are in a given industry subsector. And as I did this, I focused first on the occupations. So I was not looking at the career clusters and pathways to find the occupations, but just looking at the top occupations and then seeing which career clusters and pathways those belong to. And this is how I realized that this framework does shape up pretty well and overlay pretty well onto the career cluster framework. So you can see here that the top occupations in the ship and boat building sector really fall into three clusters primarily: architecture and construction, manufacturing, and transportation, distribution, and logistics. And also pretty much three career pathways: construction, production in the manufacturing cluster, and facility and mobile equipment maintenance in the transportation cluster. The third step in my research process was then to distill from both my scan of existing maritime industry instructional frameworks and my review of how the maritime industry sectors overlay with the career cluster framework, what content seems to be uniform across multiple maritime industry subject areas, and what content seems to be relevant across multiple CTE career pathways. So what seemed to take shape to me as I was looking at this information was that there were basically three different levels of content. So I will refer to, label these three levels as: one, the basic core content. And this is content that relates to skills of workers in the maritime industry that are not necessarily specific to the maritime industry, but more specific to a particular career pathway. So for example, for the occupations that we just took a look at in the ship and boat building industry, you can see that this is this basic core content is for folks in any type of interested in any type of construction or manufacturing pathway. So we're talking about, of course, workplace readiness skills, technology foundations, physical science, construction math and drawings, introduction to hand and power tools, materials handling, basic safety, basic rigging, an understanding of manufacturing systems. So this is not necessarily specific to the maritime industry, but important. Then there was a second level that ended up shaping up as I was looking at this over time, what I will call a Maritime Core. And this Maritime Core basically, it operates both to introduce students to the maritime industry, but also for those who will be who decide to specialize, if they were in fields within the maritime industry. This content provides them the basics within the maritime industry that they might need. And so what I found repeating, the content that repeated over time in these curricular frameworks, content about maritime industry careers and terminology associated with the maritime industry. What is the maritime industry structure and its history, and what are the economics associated with this industry? What are the primary organizations, governing bodies in the maritime industry, and what are some of the regulations? And it's also very important to be able to understand maritime technical documentation. So we're talking about instructional manuals, maps, charts, diagrams, specific to the maritime industry. Also important to have an understanding of basic nautical equipment and instrumentation. Having an introduction to maritime operations seemed to be pretty consistent in these instructional frameworks. Understanding maritime industry safety, both in the work area and on a ship or in a boat. And also one thing that seemed to come up quite often is in the maritime industry, if you're interested in marine science or boat repair, for example, understanding aquatic survival skills or knowing how to swim also came up quite frequently as something that was necessary. So then once you get beyond the core maritime content that is consistent across sectors and across career clusters, I found then that there was content that was very specific to particular industry subsectors. So for shipbuilding and repair, for example, then you're looking at content that relates specifically to ship construction drawings, ship types in construction, understanding shipbuilding facilities, methods, and processes. And then you get into the very specific trades associated with shipbuilding. So, for example, ship fitting or maritime electrical or maritime pipe fitting or maritime rigging. Maritime welding is a big one. In terms of recreational boat building and repair, then there's a separate set of more focused content. So for example, we're talking about boat handling and safety, and we're talking about marine materials, understanding how those are used in boat construction and repair, wood, metal, composites. We're talking about boat hull repair, boat equipment and instrumentation, boat engine mechanics and maintenance, marine electrical systems and ignition systems and plumbing, and boat trailer maintenance. So again, you can kind of see, I'll go back up to the previous slide. So we're talking about 3 levels: basic core content, maritime core content, and then the very more focused content. And this framework basically seemed to, developed over time as I was scanning what instructional frameworks were out there. So here I would like to share some resources in terms of instructional framework material that I think might be helpful. There were several CTE programs, shipbuilding and repair programs specifically, that have adopted maritime curriculum developed by the National Maritime Education Council and the National Center for Construction Education and Research. They've developed a maritime and shipbuilding curriculum that basically is modular and so enables programs to kind of customize what aspects of that curriculum they are interested in. An example of a program who has adopted this framework is Jackson County High School in Mississippi, their high school maritime academy is one example. And another, of course, very helpful resource in terms of understanding shipbuilding and repair curriculum is here in Virginia. The Newport News Shipbuilding Apprentice School has information that's easily accessible about their curriculum, especially for the shipbuilding trades. For recreational boat building and repair, one example is here in Virginia also, the Northern Neck Technical Center Marine Service Technology Program basically has adopted curriculum from the American Boat and Yacht Council. And the American Boat and Yacht Council has developed a marine service technology curriculum, again, specific for the boat building aspect of this industry. And the Northern Neck Technical Center, for example, that program is designed to offer students hands-on operation of boats, motors, and trailers, and to teach the practical application in the field of marine technology. This curriculum is a Virginia Department of Education modification of the American Boat and Yacht Council course and is designed to bring into the marine trades a force of younger workers who can learn about the various maritime fields. This is being offered as a partnership between local high schools, the American Boat and Yacht Council, the Atlantic Boat and Yacht Trade School, and the Virginia Institute of Marine Science Marine Advisory Program. So these are a few examples. Now moving on to the next industry subsector, maritime logistics, shipping, and transportation. So here we have three subsectors. And in this case, there is, I believe, a little bit of crossover between the industry subsectors in terms of what might be offered up in an instructional framework. So the way that we have the subsectors defined in our report on the maritime industry is port and harbor operations includes marine cargo handling, warehousing and storage, and navigational services to shippers within the port or harbor. When we're talking about deep sea and coastal freight, we're talking about all shipping and logistics activities not occurring at the port. This would include freight transportation arrangement, short distance transportation services, trucking, rail, and barge, for example, and also maritime navigation and logistics occurring away from ports or harbors, so out at sea. And then the third subsector relates to passenger water transportation, which includes recreational cruise lines, ferries, water taxis, and the like. Now, if we look at some occupations in this particular sector, I think that it's helpful basically that we, I found it actually with the crossover that it's really more falls along the lines of, sorry, my screen stopped. My slide presentation stopped moving. I apologize. I'm going to, let's see. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. See if I can get back up to the, I apologize. There we go. Okay. All right, back up to the occupations. I apologize for that. So when we're basically, when we're looking at this particular sector, you can see that all of the top occupations really fall within the transportation cluster. And there are basically 4 career pathways. We're talking about transportation operations for those that are basically driving the boat. So we're talking about sailors, we're talking about captains, mates, and pilots, motorboat operators, ship engineers who keep the ship functioning. And we're also talking about logistics planning and management services for that particular subsector. So this includes transportation, storage, and distribution managers, dispatchers, and although cargo and freight agents is associated with the sales and service pathway within this cluster, basically that goes along with logistics. And then we're talking about for port and harbor operations, we're really looking at hoist and winch operators, industrial truck and tractor operators, basic forklift operators, laborers who are moving all of this freight and cargo by hand, and also tank car, truck, and ship loaders. So these are some of the top occupations in all of these different subsectors. Now, I felt like, again, there was some crossover in terms of the subsectors here when we're overlaying it with the career cluster framework. And it might be more helpful actually to think of, to combine the transportation operations aspects of the different subsectors into one category here that might be named marine transportation. So when we're talking about the pilots of the ships, or basically anyone involved in actually operating the ships or the boats, whether it be freight or passenger, that involves a certain skill set. So I've combined those here into something that I labeled as marine transportation. And again, the basic core content here, we can look at the Virginia Department of Education's core content, basically associated with the transportation operations pathway. So this is existing basic core content in that pathway. It includes workplace readiness skills, physical science, advanced math, physics, principles of technology, technology foundations, power and transportation, automotive technology, and basic safety. These are some of the courses that are already included in our existing transportation operations pathway. Now, again, the Maritime Core content that you see here, you're going to be seeing repeating as I go throughout the presentation. And the only reason I do that is because I would like to have you be thinking about and to see how this core content relates to all of the different career clusters and pathways, how well it seems to correspond even across these career clusters and pathways. So again, for anyone that is interested in the transportation cluster, if they were to explore specializing in the maritime industry, this core content, the Maritime Core content, both could serve as an introduction to the maritime industry, and if they were to continue on, it would serve as providing the basic information that they would need in order to move on and specialize in this field. So when we're looking at more focused content in terms of marine transportation, some of the instructional framework content that you see out there involves, again, ship types and construction, understanding ship and port operations and communication, having a basic understanding of ship cargo, materials, including hazardous materials, cargo handling and logistics. Also important to understand marine science and oceanography and meteorology to understand weather patterns. Then we're talking about becoming more familiar with a more advanced understanding of nautical equipment and instrumentation. Very important to understand the basics of marine navigation law, and then to specialize more in marine navigation. So typically you're going to see that across more than one course. So typically that would be offered in a Marine Navigation 1 and 2. Same with shipboard engineering, which again refers to keeping the ship operating while it's in action. So taking care of the all of the systems on the ship that need to be working to keep it operating. And again, typically you're going to see this offered in a 1 and a 2 sequence. It's also important for folks in the marine transportation category to be familiar with maritime environmental policy and regulation. I just read a news story about how ships actually do emit quite a bit of pollution. And I believe they said that overall it was responsible for about the same amount as the coal industry in the United States. So that was kind of surprising. So it's important for folks to be aware of maritime environmental policy and regulation. And also very important to be aware of ship security and to be familiar with safety and first aid. And also emergency ship handling procedures. So we're all familiar with what just happened in the Suez Canal, what to do when, very important to know how to handle these situations. So now moving on to the port and harbor operations subsector. Again, the basic core content here is similar to what you might find in the construction cluster. And again, here's the same Maritime Core content. So for those interested, whether they're interested in piloting a ship or working in port and harbor operations, if you look at the Maritime Core content here, I believe you can see how all of this information would be relevant in both situations in terms of getting a basic understanding of the maritime industry. When we're talking about the focus content in port and harbor operations, again, it's important to be familiar with ship types and construction, but specializing more in ship and port operations and communication, and port and harbor governance and regulations. It is also important for folks in this subsector to be familiar with marine navigation law, but they're going to need to be more familiar with the handling of cargo, understanding materials, especially hazardous materials, and how to manage the cargo. They need to be familiar with cargo lifting and handling processes and procedures and equipment. They need to be familiar with mooring systems and procedures, supply chain operations and management, multimodal transportation and logistics. So not just the marine or the aspects that are related to shipping, but also understanding train and truck transportation and logistics. And again, environmental issues that are specific to the port and the harbor, and having a basic understanding of ship and port security. Now, when we move on to the maritime, what I will call the maritime freight logistics subcategory, which isn't exactly how our framework labels it, but when we're talking about logistics in particular, the core content that I saw associated with this was workplace readiness skills, physical science, advanced mathematics, principles of technology, physics, computer information systems, very important to understand, business technology, business operations, technical communications, positive customer relations, because communication is a big part of this subsector, and also having an understanding of the global logistics and supply chain, very important here. Now, when we look at the Maritime Core content, I put in brackets maybe some of the aspects of the Maritime Core content that would be a little less relevant for those in the logistics subsector. It may be a little less important for them to understand maritime technical documentation, or basic nautical equipment and instruction, or they may not necessarily need to know how to swim or and know about aquatic survival, but it certainly wouldn't hurt if they were exposed to this content. So When we're talking about the more focused content in terms of maritime freight logistics, here is some of the content that you typically find in these programs. So ship and port operations and communications, port, harbor, and transportation regulations, more specific information about cargo materials management and safety, basic cargo lifting and handling, logistics information technology and supply chain fundamentals. Again, global supply chain operations and management, distribution center operations and logistics, multimodal transportation and logistics, transportation communications and documentation is a very important part. Environmental issues in freight transportation, important to understand. And also, again, cargo ship and port security. In terms of resources that I thought were particularly helpful in maybe getting a better idea of what instructional framework content might be helpful. The United States Merchant Marine Academy curriculum I found to be very helpful in terms of showing what levels, basically what content might be offered at what different level. So the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy curriculum consists of 5 programs. They have a Marine Engineering Systems program, which relates to the engineering design aspect of shipbuilding, for example. They have a Marine Engineering and Shipyard Management program, a Marine Engineering program, which refers more to shipboard operations, a Marine Transportation program, and a Maritime Logistics and Security program. So all of this content, all of their curriculum is available to view in this link. And then here are 3 examples of programs that are offered in other states, other CTE programs. So in Texas, they offer a regional maritime program of study, and this consists of 5 courses. Principles of Maritime Science, Maritime Science 1 and 2, and an intro and advanced 2 different courses, shipboard engineering. So a total of 5. Georgia CTE program also offers a maritime studies pathway, and it consists of 4 courses. So maritime studies fundamentals, maritime industry careers, maritime studies applications, and a maritime studies internship. So that's an example of how they have shaped that up. And the Florida CTE program offers information about their global logistics and supply chain technology program. They had a lot of helpful information about what content they included in that particular program. Now moving on to the commercial fishing and seafood production sector, we see that we have 3 subsectors here. So wild capture fishing refers to the commercial capture of aquatic animals in their natural environment. Aquaculture refers to the propagation and rearing of aquatic species in controlled or selected environments. And the seafood processing subsector refers to the conversion of whole fish or shellfish harvested by fishermen or produced by aquaculture operations into products that are sold at retail stores or restaurants. So when looking at the top occupations in this sector, and again, I did this by both looking at by looking at the BLS industry occupation matrix. So again, I didn't look at the career cluster and career pathways when looking for the top occupations, but I found in all of these sectors that after I found the top occupations, they did seem to line up pretty well and pretty consistently in certain career clusters and pathways. So here we can see that basically a lot of these occupations fall within the 2 clusters, agriculture and manufacturing. So within the agriculture cluster, we're talking about the food products and processing systems pathway, the animal systems pathway, natural resources systems pathway, and also agribusiness. And so we're looking in that case at basically agricultural managers. Also, we see some of these top occupations located or aligned with the production pathway within the manufacturing industry. So here we're talking about, packaging and filling machine operators and tenders and packers and packages, an important part of the seafood processing sector. And also inspectors, testers, sorters, samplers, weighers, those belong in the quality assurance career pathway. When I was reviewing what instructional frameworks are out there, generally what you're finding here in this sector primarily are aquaculture programs. So that's what I'm focusing on here, aquaculture instructional framework. So in terms of the basic core content for this particular subsector, we're talking about, of course, workplace readiness skills, physical science, advanced mathematics, physics, principles of technology. Again, these are VDOE, CTE courses, agri-science, exploration and technology, an introduction to animal systems, biotechnology applications in agriculture, and one that I didn't see in a typical plan of study was global food systems, but that might be another course that could be offered as part of a basic core content. And again, here we see the Maritime Core content again. So even in aquaculture, as it was for shipping transportation, as it was for logistics, we're seeing here that this Maritime Core content could be very relevant for someone considering moving into the aquaculture subsector. So just getting a basic understanding of the maritime industry, the terminology, and a lot of the internships that I saw, for example, or the hands-on experience has students, working out in the water. So again, aquatic survival, understanding basic safety in terms of boat safety, understanding basic maritime operations, all of this relevant to those interested in aquaculture. Now, when we're talking about more focused content here, typically the content that you'll see relates to commercial fishing and fisheries, marine science and ecology, understanding oceanography, environmental science and stewardship. So conservation is important in terms of making sure that we can continue harvesting what needs to be harvested in our waters. Understanding aquaculture science and technologies, specifically hydrology and environmental water technology, understanding the movement of water and how it affects the coastline. Aquaponics and aquarium science. So what we're talking about here, aquaponics, is basically a food production system that couples aquaculture, which is the raising of aquatic animals, with hydroponics, which is the cultivating of plants in water. So it's kind of a combination of those two things. Genetics and biotechnology also important in terms of breeding. Aquaculture resource management, aquatic husbandry, which refers to basically the cultivating of aquatic animals and what goes into that. Understanding aquaculture markets and marketing, and also seafood science and processing. This is more specific to the aquaculture subsector. And in terms of some examples of some programs that are out there that have aquaculture programs in particular, here are three examples. The Marine Science Magnet High School in Connecticut has an aquaculture program. The Sound School in Connecticut has a regional vocational aquaculture center. And the Urban Assembly New York Harbor School also has an aquaculture program, along with several other maritime programs that might be of interest in terms of instructional framework content. Now, I'd like to move on to our fourth maritime industry sector. And here, we had labeled the subsectors, the three subsectors as naval architecture and marine engineering, geotechnical environment and ocean science, and other professional services. And to some degree, I'm not sure how I feel about putting the STEM subsectors, labeling them as maritime support services, because basically what we're seeing here are the two pathways in STEM. We're seeing the engineering and technology pathway in STEM, and it relates to more than just marine engineering, which we'll get into in just a minute. And then we're also looking at basically all aspects of marine science. So if we want to look at it that way, I think it might be a little more helpful. So we have STEM engineering and STEM science in relation to the maritime industry. And then of course we do have a whole set of additional maritime support services across a wide range of career clusters and pathways. So here it was a little bit harder for me when trying to find the top occupations in these industries. It's a little bit harder to use the BLS industry occupation matrix, because what happens is a lot of these workers are assigned to a category that is pretty generic. It's basically professional science, scientific and technical service industry. And so then it gets a little bit harder to find out what specific industries those particular workers are employed in. So I had to take a slightly different approach here. And that was to basically what I did was I looked at the generic category, occupational category for engineer, to find out what are the top industries in which engineers are employed. And so here's a list of these industries. And what you can see here is that there's quite a range of industries that relate to and would employ marine engineering and technology workers. And it's not just ship and boat building. Of course, there is that industry, but you can see it also includes the navigational measuring, electromedical and control instruments manufacturing industry, the engine, turbine, and power transmission equipment manufacturing industry, research and development, communications equipment manufacturing. All of this goes into shipbuilding. Testing laboratories, computer and peripheral equipment manufacturing, electrical equipment manufacturing, commercial and service industry machinery manufacturing. And so when I looked at it that way and saw all of these industries in which engineers in general are employed, you can really see how basically the industries that industry hubs start forming and start concentrating in particular geographic areas. So in my presentation last time, we talked about how the Newport News, Virginia Beach Metropolitan Statistical Area had a very high concentration when comparing it nationally of ship and boat building workers. And you can kind of see why now when you start seeing all of these peripheral industries that relate to ship and boat building, you can see how it just might start building and building as a hub in a particular geographic area, because all of these industries are associated and are important. So when we look at types of occupations that basically are associated with all of these different types of engineer industries, we can see that we're talking about we're looking at occupations in both the STEM engineering and technology pathway, as well as the manufacturing cluster in the manufacturing production process development pathway. So this has a lot to do with how occupations are classified, how they're linked with the career cluster framework. At the higher levels, the engineers, those are typically assigned to the STEM cluster based on their particular the skills that go into their jobs, the nature of their work, whereas the technicians are classified using rules basically that align them with the pathway that basically has the most, in which the most of them are employed. So in this case, we see engineers, the different types of engineers. We're talking about architectural engineering managers, computer hardware engineers, electrical engineers. Of course, it includes marine engineers and naval architects, but isn't limited to those. We're talking about mechanical engineers, industrial engineers. All of these types of engineers aren't necessarily in their job title specific to the maritime industry, but nevertheless, many of them are employed in the maritime industry and specializing in their areas within the maritime industry. Same goes for the technicians. So we're talking about mechanical drafters, electrical and electronics engineering technicians, electromechanical technicians, industrial engineering technicians, and so forth. So when we're looking at the core content for this particular, for the engineering and technology pathways, we can look at the existing engineering technology pathway core content that is already there. So this includes physical science, multivariate calculus, physics, principles of technology and technological systems, technical drawing and design, engineering analysis and applications, and engineering concepts and processes. All of those are basic to these occupations without necessarily being specific to the maritime industry. But again, here again, we see this maritime core content that basically would introduce these students to the maritime industry and get their feet wet in the basic concepts of the maritime industry if they were to go on to specialize. When we're looking at the more focused content in this particular subsector, we're talking about being familiar with ship construction, shipboard systems, marine propulsion, digital shipbuilding and technology, modeling and simulation, systems engineering, marine design fundamentals, more advanced marine design for ships and submarines. Again, marine engineering across 2 different levels, 1 and 2 was pretty typical. Marine electrical engineering, chemistry for marine engineers, marine materials engineering, and naval architecture. These are more advanced, specialized content areas for this particular subsector. Then we're also looking at a subsector that I label here as STEM marine science. So occupations that are more typically associated with marine science. They include quite a range, but in general, again, you'll find these occupations located in the science and mathematics pathway, in the STEM career cluster, and also in the agriculture career cluster, in the natural resources systems career pathway, and environmental service systems career pathways. And some examples of these occupations include natural science managers, conservation technicians, environmental engineers and engineering technicians, surveying and mapping technicians, and cartographers, also employed in this particular subsector. And then when we're talking about maybe some of the careers that involve more advanced education levels, biochemists and biophysicists, microbiologists, zoologists and wildlife biologists, which would include marine biologists, conservation scientists, atmospheric and space scientists for understanding climate change, for example, and other geoscientists. And again, we can look at our existing science and math pathway core content here, more focused on including biotechnology foundations and bioengineering courses. Again, the relevant maritime core content. And when we're looking at the more focused content associated with marine science, we're looking more at environmental science, marine geography, marine taxonomy, so understanding the terminology associated with marine science, understanding the basic fundamentals of marine science, marine ecology, ecosystems and conservation, marine biology, looking in particular at coastal and wetland ecosystems. Fundamentals of oceanography was frequently offered or required. Marine geology, which is basically studying the more physical aspects of the oceans, for example, the deep ocean floor, or understanding coastal erosion and so forth. Also, in some cases, specializing in marine fisheries science. And it's also very important to understand marine environmental issues and policy, especially in relation to conservation and understanding weather, climate change, and its relationships to the ocean. And now for our third subsector within this larger industry sector, we're basically talking about marine support service occupations here. And when I was selecting occupations to sample here, I basically was just, I did in this case basically go through the career pathways and just tried to find a wide range of occupations that aren't necessarily, you wouldn't necessarily consider as part of the maritime industry, but certainly could be if people wanted to focus their work within the maritime industry. So we're talking about here fish and game wardens, for example. They are basically located in the agriculture career cluster in the natural resource systems pathway, but also to some extent associated with law enforcement. Commercial divers are another example of an occupation that is, could be associated with the maritime industry. Photographers specializing in marine photography, for example, or technical writers also specializing in technical writing associated with maritime industry construction or engineering. We also shouldn't forget about a lot of our post-secondary teachers are conducting research that is moving our understanding of the science associated with the maritime industry. So certainly their work should be considered here when we're talking about the maritime industry. Atmospheric, earth, marine, and space sciences teachers, for example. Legislators are important too in terms of governing, making laws that affect environmental issues, or having a wide range of impact on the maritime industry and how it operates. Compliance officers, occupational health and safety specialists, all of these could be specializing in the maritime industry. Travel guides in the hospitality and tourism cluster, for example, might specialize in maritime travel, or for example, you might think of fishing guides is something that comes to mind here. So recreation workers would be included there, and firefighters. Some of them specialize in firefighting on ships, for example. There certainly are environmental lawyers out there who could be considered within the realm of the maritime industry at large. And when we're talking about nonprofits that might be interested in marine conservation, you might consider occupations like public relations specialists in the marketing cluster. So again, here I was going for demonstrating the breadth of occupations that could be associated with the maritime industry and the range of career clusters and pathways in which those occupations fall. Of course, the basic core content would vary widely in this diverse set of career pathways, but again, a maritime core content, a course or a set of courses that enable students in these diverse pathways to explore the maritime core content might give them the opportunity to consider how their current career paths could potentially intersect with the maritime industry career opportunities. So again, I think the Maritime Core content here would be relevant. And for some examples of some resources that relate to the STEM curriculum, marine STEM programs. Again, we could look at the United States Merchant Marine Academy curriculum as an example, especially the marine engineering and marine engineering systems programs. The Virginia Institute of Marine Science here in Virginia basically offers some guidelines as to what might be included in a marine science curriculum. There is also the Sea Grant Bridge Ocean Science Education Resource, which has lesson plans for ocean science education. And the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, offers an enrichment in marine sciences and oceanography curriculum that might also serve as a resource. So to start wrapping up here, I think a couple of key points, summary key points, are basically understanding that the maritime industry consists of occupations across a wide range of career clusters, but they're especially concentrated in these 5: agriculture, architecture and construction, transportation, manufacturing, and STEM. When I was surveying the curriculum content, again, there were some basic maritime industry concepts that kept showing up over and over again that were relevant to all sectors and subsectors of the maritime industry that could basically or would need to be supplemented by more advanced specialized training relevant to specific maritime industry subsectors. I had a few additional concluding thoughts, and of course, in line with the Trailblazers program that we have at the University of Virginia, Trailblazers referring to understanding non-traditional gender participation in occupations and CTE courses is a key part of our work. So I always try to bring that in where I can. You know, it's important to keep in mind that the gender composition of the maritime industry most likely skews non-traditional for females. And so I kind of did a review of all the occupations that I showed you here in this presentation, and did find basically that there were none that were non-traditional for males, but many that were non-traditional for females, especially when you exclude the non-STEM maritime support occupations. So that's just something to keep in mind here. And also, again, I just want to conclude by saying that, you know, my research here in conjunction with this presentation is just a start in identifying the core content for developing a maritime industry instructional framework. Very important, as you know, that additional research really should incorporate consultation with maritime industry workforce professionals to get a better understanding of what skills are needed, where they are seeing a need for workers or a shortage of workers, and also important to consult with curriculum design experts. Now, I would like to add that we are working on developing a tool that will help identify gaps between supply and demand in terms of what CTE program, how many completers we have in CTE programs versus what the regional labor market demand will be for those workers. We are working on that tool, which will give us a slightly better understanding to help basically with not only course planning, but with understanding what workers are in demand in what particular occupations and subsectors. I thank you for inviting me to present here today, and would like to ask you if you have any questions or comments or points of discussion.
Okay, well, I'll start out, and I want to thank you again for bringing this information in. The last time that you were here also was really an eye-opener for me. One of the things I heard throughout all this is that, well, if you bring in the last time also, that Virginia I didn't know, but Virginia has a pretty strong maritime presence when it comes to the number of jobs and opportunities and all that. And I don't have the last presentation, but we ranked like number 1, number 2 in a lot of categories, right? And you look at states, you mentioned Texas, Georgia, and Florida, where they actually had a pathway related to this. And then I think somewhere near the end of your presentation, you talked about, you know, the basic core content of what's existing, that it would need to be supplemented with something else, more technical or maybe post-secondary type of training. And you know, George and David, Dr. Etchman, I'm not necessarily suggesting this, but you know, because you keep adding on clusters, you know, you have your basic cluster, but if the maritime impact and opportunities are that great in Virginia, even if you don't have another pathway, I don't think we have any maritime courses. I don't think you identified any, but we don't have any that are approved. So I guess my thought is with the impact that the maritime industry have on Virginia, feels like we're kind of behind, you know, in that respect, as far as connecting and preparing the students for those type of jobs.
And I'd like to add to that too. And I probably didn't, and maybe should have featured it a little bit more in my presentation, but you know, what I did find, I was looking more at I guess the non-hands-on types of instructional framework content. But for the maritime studies programs that do exist, having hands-on experience was tended to be a very important part of their experience. So it wasn't only the course content, but the internships, the hands-on experiences, that also seemed to be an important part of these programs.
So, and that's another piece. I'm glad you mentioned that. There are some great resources in Virginia, right, for partnerships. And I believe you mentioned that the American Boat and Yacht Club or something like that. There is a partnership with the CTE program. I don't know if it's possible, and I know we have Stuart that's a part of this advisory committee, but the apprenticeship school, I don't know what kind of partnership we could develop there, but I mean, that's what they do, right? Okay. And it could be a feeder for them. It could be also maybe some type of partnership that can be formed with the CTE program. And then at Virginia State University, you mentioned, you know, different types of, I guess, food, right? Marine life. I believe they still have some type of aquatic farm at the school, and it could be possibilities there of some type of partnership too. I just think if the industry is that strong in Virginia, if not a pathway, if not courses, and to your point now, is maybe those hands-on, those work studies, those relationships with those resources that are already in the state.
There's another thing, Lauren, here, I'm not sure if you're aware of, but the Institute for Advanced Learning and Research down in Danville is right now putting together a grant proposal to the Department of Defense. They're working in partnership with ODU, Modeling and Advanced Modeling and Simulation Center. They're working with us at Virginia State University, and it is focused on maritime careers, really only a small subset of everything that you presented today, but it's around manufacturing and STEM and building out manufacturing, engineering, technology programs and creating paths creating connections to the GoTech pipeline that they've built up in South Central Virginia, expanding that down on the peninsula to a bunch of schools that reach all the way down into elementary school to make some of the career paths more visible and certainly a lot more support for them. And then up through the university system, building out, creating a new technology program at ODU and doing a lot of marketing and support work for our existing engineering and technology programs at VSU. And I can put in the chat if you want. You can get you in contact with somebody at IALR down in Danville, so you can get in touch with what their proposal is.
I have some comments to share as well. Catherine, thank you again for your detailed presentation. I think this is a tremendous resource for school divisions. As you know, beginning pathways at the local level really is an educational experience, and you really do have to begin with the promotion and the understanding of opportunities. And I think this resource can be a fantastic start for some school divisions to be able to show, look at these pathways and look at the numbers and the variety of jobs. I always find it interesting in looking at the National Career Cluster model and how there's so much overlap. As I was listening to your presentation, when you look at transportation and logistics, when you look at the STEM related fields, right now there's only really 2 pathways in the STEM related career cluster. That has the least number of pathways in that national model. So enhancing that career cluster could be a way. But as I listened to your presentation, you could see with the types of jobs and the pathways that are identified, this really crosses over a lot of existing career clusters. But I just think this is a tremendous resource to really continue the education within local communities about the types of careers that are available.
A key role of the advisory committee is to advise the Virginia Board of Education and the Virginia Department of Education pertaining to cutting edge areas in which instruction should be provided. What we have attempted to do in the last 2 meetings is to bring before you research-based information pertaining to the maritime industry. Hopefully we provided enough information that we might ask the question, what should we do? Should we pursue the development of a dedicated series of pathways in maritime? Should we acknowledge the potential of a cluster in maritime being important to the Commonwealth of Virginia based on the data that Catherine provided in the first presentation? It's that level of guidance that we now need from the advisory committee in terms of next steps in the department's efforts to ensure that we have students prepared for occupations in this area that are, it appears clearly, in demand in Virginia.
I think it's a clear yes. Virginia, everything east of 95 is navigable water. Fredericksburg, Washington, D.C., the Potomac, Richmond, the James River, all the Chesapeake Bay, the Eastern Shore, the Atlantic Ocean. If we're not providing opportunities for career paths in that industry, we're not doing anybody any good. There's so many resources that we have here. The Port of Virginia that takes in Hampton Roads and all of that is a huge, Stuart, if he were here, would be like beating the drum really hard. The Norfolk Naval Shipyard, Newport News Shipbuilding, all of that. Every ship that goes up to the Port of Baltimore comes through the Chesapeake Bay. We've got to have this. My father owns a marina and a boatyard up in Colonial Beach on the Potomac. And it's hard to find people that can actually do repair work for recreational boats. And yeah, it's also a huge tourism industry. So it's something we have to do. Also, Catherine, before everybody else chimed in, some of these roles and jobs take years or decades to become that. If you're a ship's captain, they don't pull people out of high school just to go pilot a boat. Yeah, if you're a pilot, so ships come into the port and then you have a pilot boat that goes out there, and the team that navigates through to take you to dock to the port is a different team. So that takes years of training. So we've got to start early to be able to get that. And it's so wide. I mean, I think you showed how broad this industry is. I think it's a resounding yes. I'm going to be quiet now.
Mr. Wilcox, do you need a motion on the floor in order for us to proceed?
It would be good to have some definite guidance from this advisory committee in terms of continuing to move forward. Yes.
Okay, so I move that we move forward with the Maritime Industry Instructional Framework Research and Policy to the school board. Is it to the Virginia Department of Education? That's where the next level will be?
To the Board of Education.
Okay, so I move that we take the Maritime Industry Instructional Framework to the Department of Education, Virginia Department of Education.
I second it.
Before we vote, can I ask a question here? So obviously what Catherine presented, I mean, a lot of depth, but at the same time, it's very, very broad. And there's a lot here. And I'm not sure where all of this is going to go, but is it appropriate to try to attack all of the different career fields, from welding ships together and engineering to shucking oysters, or should we be more concentrated and focused here? And really why I'm asking is I'm afraid of dilution of energy and effort, because there's a lot here. And of course, we want to provide employment industries for all skill levels, for all interests and things like that. But at the end of the day, whatever the recommendations come down to are going to be met with some limitation on resources to support them. And I just want to make sure that we're not going to over dilute here.
Drexel, you're on mute.
So that's a good point, Lauren. And there's a lot of data presented in the first presentation and a lot of data presented today, and it's kind of bookends of it. What I would envision with this motion is that you take a look at the demand, the growth parts of the industry where we can have impact, and then maybe as we move forward with it, you would fashion a strategy that would basically give you the biggest bang for your effort, right? So that you don't spread yourself too thin and basically have no measurable outcome of what happened or what you did. So I think I take your points as valid, and I don't know exactly what the process is, but I would imagine that the points that you are pointing out and what I just said about looking at, the jobs, the growth, and where the impact, and what do we have in place already, and then come up with a strategy that would fit within all of that.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, Catherine.
I just wanted to add too, I think part of my research might be helpful too, to address Mr. Sodell's point, and that is in other states, sometimes what they have done is they have focused these maritime studies regionally. So that seemed to be one approach that some states have taken, where the programs are offered in coastal communities or so forth. So I just wanted to share that information that I discovered in my research.
So thank you for that. So with the motion that's there, George and Dr. Echelon, you guys would, you're going to develop a focus and a strategy out of all the information we have, and then you'll come back or move forward with a more focus, to Lauren's point, okay, of what we can do or what we should do.
Right. If this motion passes, we will begin to narrow the focus in terms of where are the specific high-level in-demand occupations and job demand, and we'll bring that back to the advisory committee as we would then gear up for the curriculum development phase. So the advisory committee would have another opportunity to provide guidance as we zero in on the most effective areas to begin.
Okay, so Lauren, does that kind of address some of your concerns?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Any other comments before we vote? And someone's taking notes, so you got what the motion is. So we had a motion and we had a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed? Okay, thank you. That motion is passed, and looking forward to hearing from you again from the Department of Education on what you've narrowed down to and the basis for that. So that sounds good. All right. If there are no other comments on that, we'll move to the next agenda item. And is talking about the focus subcommittee work groups. And I think we had a little bit of discussion on that earlier this year. But George, can you kind of walk us through a little bit of that?
Yes, let me bring.
And Catherine, you're welcome to stay, or it's your call.
Thank you. Actually, I may actually leave because I have another meeting coming up shortly. Before I do, if I may, I just wanted to follow up on one question that Dr. Stevens had last time for me, and that was I was supposed to look into where aquaculture operations are concentrated geographically. And I don't know if I still have the capability to share my screen, but let's see. I don't know if you can see that.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so what I found out was basically, and I wish this were a little larger, sorry, but the counties that are highlighted in dark orange are where have the highest concentration of aquaculture operations. So about 40 plus in each of these counties in terms of number of aquaculture operations in 2017. My source here was the USDA aquaculture census. Then you can see in lighter orange, these counties have each anywhere from 12 to 20 aquaculture operations. And then the counties in gray have 10 or less. The counties in white have none. So as you can see, aquaculture operations are significantly concentrated in the southern part of the Chesapeake Bay area. Now, in relation to Northern Virginia in particular, you were asking about, I also looked then at Maryland in their counties, and that's not shown here, but essentially what I found is there was only one county that is just north of, basically it's in the southernmost part of Maryland's Chesapeake Bay area, St. Mary's County. The highest number of aquaculture operations in the state belong to them, and it was only 12 compared to, say, 40 each in out here in Northampton and Accomack counties. So it is primarily concentrated here, but as you can see, there are operations throughout the state, but just to a lesser degree. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much for remembering me. And yes, it does.
All right, thank you. And thanks again to the committee for inviting me to present today. And it was great to see all of you again.
All right, thank you again. And we appreciate all your input and your knowledge.
Thank you.
Okay, George.
As Catherine's hopping off there, we do want to thank her for the work that the University of Virginia contributes to our efforts. Prior to the pandemic, the advisory committee had considerable discussion around what should its committee work focus on and what should its priorities be. This document that we are looking at was an attachment to the January 16, 2020 minutes of our work. And one of the things that came up in the last meeting and Stuart would have been addressing in this meeting is what type of committees, subcommittees, should we form and have as working subcommittees during the 21-22 fiscal year and beyond. So as we looked at this, we identified priorities 1, 2, and 3, and the context of each of those priorities is identified there. And as we unpack that, we had great discussion around various areas of work, scope of work, and then we prioritized those areas of work. So this document provides good background so that we would not be starting from scratch in terms of committee focus. But the core question is, and your individual expertise and priorities around career and technical education should come into play here as well. As we spend a few minutes discussing what are some priority subcommittees that we should focus on in the next year. For example, would there be a member of the committee or two that would like to work with this maritime research that we have just said we want to see go forward? A couple of years ago, we were involved as the energy cluster emerged. Is there further subcommittee level priority work that we need to have there? We have new members on the advisory committee, and what are areas in which you might identify as priorities for possible subcommittee work?
So I like the idea of having subcommittees because, you know, when we meet, it's months before we meet again, right? And as an advisory committee, we do a lot of hearing and listening to a report and what's going on. But I think if we want to have more impact, if we have subcommittees or committees that could do work and bring back recommendations, I think we have more impact. And I don't know what the committee names would be. Some of them could be ad hoc, like the maritime industry. That could be one that we got information, so now what do we want to do, and then assign a committee for that. But we're looking at, I guess, priority 2, right? In which every CTE director I've talked to tend to have an issue there. The one dealing with, you know, people qualified to teach, right? The programs and all that. So if you take this maritime industry and we decide we want to have move forward with a cluster or some classes, the next question, even before you get to the number of students that want to do it, is who do you have to teach that? Right? Where do you get the people with the skills, with the training to come in and teach it? And I imagine that would be a struggle. But I think that one alone, because even in other states, that one alone, priority 2, probably deserves some type of committee to see how we can help tackle that for the school systems and for the Department of Education. But there are probably other ones out there, but that's the one that jumped out to me, priority 2.
Other comments?
George, I can't see
I
what
definitely, I'm
priority
sorry.
3 is.
Okay, why don't you go first, Suzanne, and then we get Dr. Long. Suzanne, what you said? Not sorry, Shakina, sorry.
Oh, I definitely think committees is the way to go. When we meet as a group, we should be able to bring back information, and the committees is where a lot of the hard work and a lot of the input and just bringing the main ideas to you. So I think we could flesh out a lot of the information that we have that Mr. Sodell was talking about, and just flesh it out, and then we'd be able to bring back more to the committee, and then we could accomplish more when we reconvene.
Okay, Dr. Long, what you said?
Yes, I agree with that. And certainly teacher shortage is something that would be the topic to look into. That has been one of our policies with Virginia ACTE that we've tried to share, that right now the critical shortage area of CTE teachers in the state rates number 4 out of 10. So we're up there within that top tier group of teacher shortage. And what can we do about that, to whether it's teacher prep programs, whether it's career switcher programs or whatever. And I certainly agree that subcommittees would be a great way to go, that our committee would be actively involved in doing some research to bring back to the group. I'm unable to see priority 3. So what, if you could tell me what that is?
Okay, priority 3, you just want the headline of what it says?
Yeah, I
It's-
can't see it on my screen.
Okay, it says ensure successful implementation of the profile of Virginia graduate and the accountability system for school quality as embodied in the revisions to the standards of accreditation.
Okay.
Which, you know, priority 3, the second part of that is that the right place for me, the standards of accreditation. But if you're talking about revisions to that, modifying that, I think that raises that up to a higher level, you know. Any other comments for George about possible committees or areas that we want to put out there? I mentioned one, and then it was echoed on another one. One is obviously this maritime, research or program that we are looking at. That could be a committee. The other one would be something along teacher recruitment, retention, and development, you know.
So if you look at the makeup of the advisory board, each of us has a career cluster that we represent. Mine is architecture and construction. Other people have human services, information technology. How does that square with these subcommittees? Are we looking to focus on just certain efforts that we need to have 2 or 3 or 4 advisory committee members focus on those? Or how does that, how do you see that working out?
I think you kind of raised a good point, and maybe the 2 that I mentioned are kind of ad hoc, right? Because they're a need at the moment. But I think what you're talking about is maybe if you look at the industry clusters, right, and maybe having subcommittees around those that can bring ideas to the committee and to the Department of Education. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, I see if you look at the website where it has all of the board members,
right?
Stewart represents manufacturing career cluster. Sean Avery represents government and public administration. Me, architecture and construction. Christina, human services, information technology. So each of us brings something to the table to help guide George and David and the CTE programs. So I think we still need to do that, but there are some that are represented. Philip, who hasn't been active, represents transportation and distribution. There's another one for manufacturing, education. Anyway, there's different things that might have overweight in representation that we need to make sure that we are bringing everything to the table and not just focusing on a couple things. But we do need to focus on a couple things. So I don't want to lose track of why we've got this type of committee that represents different career clusters, but there is a way that we can also narrow and laser the focus.
I think the work that we did in January 2020 helped put these 3 priorities in place. And if we focused on these 3 priorities, because the work's already been done on that we identified that these were priorities. And you're exactly right that everybody brings a certain expertise to the table. I could see, William, where your expertise in construction could certainly have an impact on any of these 3 priorities. not just from the construction industry, but experience as well. So I think if we went with the priorities as subcommittees, and then if folks on the committee indicated where they would like to be working on a subcommittee, then you're right, 3 or 4 members serve on those committees and then come back with a report of what that they have found of what they're doing. So I think we've got the framework there. Let's address these 3 priorities first, and then going forward, we can see if where we need to expand committees or subcommittees.
I'm in agreement with that. To me, just one other piece of feedback that I'm hearing is the need to be focusing on workforce development, and maybe not so much getting locked into a straight committee on maritime, but maybe a committee on workforce development, and looking at the labor market data and looking where the needs are. You know, the topics I think will surface just like where we are with the evaluation of maritime. And then that's when we tap into the experiences of everyone that's on the committee, because we are trying to bring a balance to career cluster representation. So I love the idea of getting feedback and moving work in the workforce area. As the director of workforce development, this is perfect. But to me, I don't know if I really think we would really want to just lock into a straight committee on one area, but you know, really a committee that could continue through the work of maritime and beyond based on needs.
I really enjoyed Catherine's presentation on maritime, these past couple of meetings for us. And I think the breadth of what needs to be accomplished within the maritime industry. The industry is so broad. You know, it covers everything from fisheries and aquaculture to design and construction, engineering, safety, environmental. It covers so many things that we need to focus on, but we already overlap on so many of these basic career clusters. And for me, with the Department of Transportation, you know, I focus on road and bridge construction. You know, we have other folks on the advisory board that focus on engineering and construction or energy or something else, but we overlap even on energy, you know, as far as the design of propulsion systems for maritime. So we really, we've got our folks in place. We just need to, you know, I need to learn something new about maritime. And it's interesting for me to be able to actually recognize how far we've progressed in such a short period of time to be talking about the breadth of the job opportunities we have for our young folks in these industries. But also, you know, we need to, as far as focusing on 1, 2, and 3 of these subcommittees, rather, we need to discern, you know, where our strengths lie and volunteer for some extra work here in deciding, you know, how we can best benefit our students out there. But the shortage of teachers, you know, because they're making so much money in our technical industries, the shortage of teachers is critical right now too. You know, how do we borrow folks from the industries to make sure that our young folks are getting the opportunities and the skills to prepare them for working alongside these people in the industries to make the money out there that they're anticipating. We don't want to shortchange our students either. And I think a couple things hit home to me on Catherine's presentation. you know, we need the opportunities for the young people for internships. And if our future opportunities don't provide internships for our young folks, then, you know, we've left them hanging. We need to get them out there in the field and get them working alongside their mentors. And, you know, it's, heck, I wish I had my career to do all over again, you know, listening to some of our own programs. And so I think we just need to volunteer and pitch in, do, you know, volunteer for what we can do right now, and then explore what we can do in the future for our kids. But we need to prepare to keep moving on a lot of things, because a tablet is slipping here. We need to keep moving. Things are happening fast out there, and we owe it to the kids.
Can I say something? I liked what Dr. Long said about dividing the committees based on the priorities. I think when we did that work in January, I remember us doing that. It was very enlightening to kind of have the priorities as a guide. And then we can bring in our specific. For me, obviously, it's the arts, technology, arts, and you know, the arts sector. So I like the notion of using the priorities as a guide for the committees. And then that way we can infuse our different areas and our different areas of interest. And it would kind of, I think, bring it in some so that it's not so broad. Just my thoughts.
I agree with that, and to Ed's point and Dr. Long, I think your area of focus and interest can be applied to all of those priorities, right? In order to make sure that we're preparing students for the workforce. I just have one other question. You know, we don't always have to recreate the wheel, and I know Virginia is not Florida, Georgia, Texas, or anywhere else, but is there any value in looking at what other CTE groups in other states are doing, and what type of committees they have, and which might inform us on what we might want to look at?
I think that would be the first place that we should start. If whoever decided on this committee, I think that would be the first place to look at what's already out there and what can we mirror and what works for them, so we don't fall into the same pitfalls that they did, and learn from their mistakes.
Yeah, I think it'll be a worthwhile effort. I agree, obviously. And, you know, Virginia is Virginia, right? So we can look at that and then we can tailor it to what we need for Virginia.
Just to add to that, you know, looking internally, a change in Perkins 5 is the addition of the comprehensive local needs assessment. So a lot of this evaluation of existing pathways and new pathways is taking place at the local school division level as they're evaluating their current offerings and aligning those to the needs of workforce. So taking a close look at the comprehensive needs assessments across school divisions really, you know, would be a great place to start as well, internally. I think it's good to look externally, but I also think internally as well.
Okay, so George, what else do you guys need, I guess, on this in order to kind of get back to a point that, because I'm not quite sure if we, you know, notwithstanding what we said, if we know what committees we need to volunteer for yet.
We, as a committee, we meet 4 times a year.
Right.
Certainly, we could have additional meetings as needed. But if we are really going to get some things done, we need some subcommittee leaders that will be the point of contact, hopefully leaving this meeting, that department staff could support in that work. If we leave this meeting without identifying some focus, it delays really moving forward, given the demands of the Commonwealth.
So if we focus on the priorities, okay, I think what I'm hearing you saying is that it would be great to leave this meeting with a point person on each one of those priorities. And then we figure out what else we have to do as far as forming the committee and all that.
So can I just ask a question here? I hope that this is going to be helpful, but to kind of turn it back to George, to David, and kind of thinking about what Ed said a few minutes ago. So we all here represent different industry sectors. Maybe there's some overlap, but people like George and David have the extremely unenviable task of having to fight for every penny with the legislature that gets pointed towards education. And we could lament all day about how there isn't enough to go around. So I guess the question that I would ask is, what could we do as a committee in the context of standing up subcommittees that could potentially make their job just a little bit easier, okay, by pointing, by bringing forward the demand from the different stakeholders from one end of the Commonwealth to the other? What would help them to make their case through the Department of Education to get the funding that we need so that Virginia does not trail other states, and in fact becomes a leader in education and in career and technical education. Because if we're going to be talking about attracting people to the teaching profession and not have them hired away by other private sector industries, there's an undeniable financial element to that has to be addressed. We have to make teaching more financially attractive. Otherwise, people are just going to follow the money. And teaching is almost always going to lose out to the private sector. We all know that story. So what are some of the things that would help CTE as part of the Department of Education to fight for the resources to do some of the things that'll enable these priorities? I don't know if that helped or not, but
it does. Since the period that Lolita Hall was CTE state director, we have strategically worked to evolve this advisory committee to a group that truly represents the career clusters. And that's what William has brought us back around to, that we have really focused on bringing to the table expertise from those industries. And while I could plant a seed to send us down a certain path, all 17 of the clusters that are represented are critically important. And what we really need is your recommendations. Because when we can move forward your recommendations from business and industry, it tells the story in a context of not being what the Department of Education staff wants, but that we are identifying the needs of business and industry. So as one of my colleagues years ago would say, every now and then we have to get off the fence. And what we really need you to do, and you talked about so many wonderful ways that this work could be structured. And none of those ways are wrong. And nothing prevents us from making adjustments at any given time. But we would really like to leave this meeting having identified subcommittee leaders that then the staff would go to work for, to really support you in doing work between meetings that would be high priorities for you. So is the construction industry an area that we really need to bring back some critical information? Is manufacturing, is the arts. Suzanne has really done wonderful in this area. Is this an area that we need to step up what we do in the period going forward? Certainly the pandemic and health and medical sciences is critical. So I thank Lauren for his prompt, but I really want the committee to make that decision, and then it becomes the staff's job to help you in that work.
So Drexel and George, here's just a logistical question. From what I read in the website here, I see that Drexel, Suzanne, and Tamika are rolling off. This is their last meeting. Is that correct?
And from my understanding, that's correct. So as we were talking about subcommittees, I'm interested in a lot, but from a logistical point, I may not be around to be a part.
It looks like there's 4 of us left.
George comes off too.
George, you might have your answer there. That from whoever showed up at this meeting, that becomes your. Maybe we get 2 subcommittees out of the 4 of us that are here. I nominate Lauren and Sukina to be subcommittee chairs. And I'll be a subcommittee chair or a sub chair.
I'll be glad to support. I just typed this to David because I have to step off for a few minutes, but I would be glad if we're talking about specific industry sectors. I'm obviously here representing manufacturing and engineering and fields like that. So I would be glad to support and work as George just described, supporting those areas. Unfortunately, I have 0 to contribute in healthcare and many of the other fields that we do know are hugely important to us.
And of course, I'll volunteer for the transportation industry. And it overlaps into engineering and construction, of course.
Dr. Stevens is smiling, so she's she's ready
No,
to say.
I'm actually open. I'm laughing, but I'm open to anything. If it means that I need to learn maritime, I will learn maritime. Whatever you guys need, I'm open.
So
Okay.
George, it looks like you've got your two committees. You just got to tell them what you want them to, are they priority 1 and priority 2?
So George, if you have some volunteers, I think I heard you say that someone from staff would begin to reach out to them and then the kind of form whatever it is that they're going to form in order to move forward.
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to, Lauren has to leave, but Lauren, I don't know if you have enough time to do your update now, or I can just read what you wrote.
I can do it very quickly, and then I do need to just jump off for a few minutes, but I do plan to be back if we're going to do the roundtable. I just wanted to quickly update on the FAME program for education for manufacturing maintenance technicians. So we are moving forward with our 9 employers. We're working to recruit 17 candidates right now. We have one from Isle of Wight Smithfield High School in Isle of Wight County who's already accepted an offer. There's going to be a signing ceremony tonight for that young person. Our biggest challenge right now is finding candidates who want to go into these middle skill careers. We are doing a full court press, trying to identify candidates and get them to apply for the program. This is in conjunction with Richard Bland College, but it's a bit of a challenge. And that's my main update. The other thing, I'm guessing David may talk about it in a few minutes, but we'll be part of a panel discussion at the Experience Works conference next week, where we're bringing together panelists from industry, CTE, and even bringing a student together to talk about how we're just practically trying to bring employers and CTE programs together to create WBL experiences. That's me. And, I'll be back in a few minutes, folks. So,
all right.
Jump out.
And when he comes back, if you have questions for what he said, we can get those questions.
Yes.
And George, I'm sorry for deviating and not finishing the discussion on the committee, but do you have what you need for the committees now?
Could we review the leadership members of the 2 subcommittees? And I would ask Kevin Riley, who's taking the minutes, to ensure us that this information is accurate in the minutes.
So I'll review. Mr. Bowman noted that there were some members in attendance rotating off the committee, and then nominated Mr. Sodell and Dr. Stevens as subcommittee chairs. Mr. Sodell volunteered to work on a subcommittee, as did Ms. Plymeyer.
Yeah, I volunteered to work on priority 2.
Same here, priority 2.
And did Suzanne, did you cover her? I thought, did you volunteer to do something on the committee?
I'm actually rotating off the committee.
Say again, you're rotating off?
I think I'm on road. I'm not quite sure how it works, George. You might want to help me with that, but I think I rotate off.
Okay.
This is my cycle. Me and Tamika, Tamika, are you there too? Yeah, I think we both came in on the same time. I just don't know what the process is.
Okay, so George, does that capture what you wanted?
And the title of the 2 distinct subcommittees, Kevin?
Title of the 2 subcommittees?
Yes.
Well, Dr. Stevens and Ms. Plymeyer volunteered to work on priority 2, and we still need volunteers for priority 1.
I'll help Lauren with priority 1.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I don't think we need to vote on that. I appreciate all the volunteers who volunteered for the different committees. Okay, so let's move on to the next agenda item. And I think this is getting to an update from George.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Given the time of the day, we will defer to the roundtable and share a few closing comments at the end in terms of end of the year at the department.
Okay, it sounds good. And someone has a dog who is trying to be a part of the meeting. So we can mute him, not really, but if you can mute your computer. So I'll start the roundtable by calling people so that we won't have to worry about who's talking. And I'll just look at my screen. So Dr. Stevens, do you have an update?
Yes, so on Tuesday, I had the privilege of presenting the Stafford County Advisory Committee, a CTE Advisory Committee, to the school board and our recommendations. And it's very much aligned to our priorities here on our committee, just in terms of what do we need to do to make sure that teachers are involved in CTE. And one of the things that I've learned is that we have these student organizations like DECA and Skills USA, but the teachers are not compensated for their enrollment and their involvement in taking our children to, competitions and stuff like that. So that's something that I would like to see, when you have other extracurriculum activities, those teachers are compensated, either some stipend or whatever the case may be. But the CTE teachers are not compensated in any way when they go out and do these competitions, even the late hours and nights they spend. So, when we talk about priorities, that's something definitely that we need to look upon, and making sure that we want the teachers to be involved and we want people to be involved in CTE, but are we doing them justice? What are we doing to make it attractive? So I'm very happy to see that this is our priority, so it aligns with what's going on locally in our school district.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions?
I've seen that also firsthand with Skills USA. These teachers prepare their students to go to competitions, to go to states, to be qualified to go to states. So there's a lot of weekends and evenings that are dedicated to that. It could be that there could be some recognition to those CTE teachers that are there, and maybe there could be a prize for that to help. Also, that help a little competition there. That's me and my private sector mindset, but I'm not sure that works in practically.
Okay. Ed, since you're speaking, do you want to give an update?
Sure. The construction industry is booming. It's very frothy. I think we all probably saw here what the inflation rate is for consumer products. It's twice that in construction. It's really causing a pinch. Year over year, obviously lumber is up 270%. It's starting to ease up. But overall in the construction market, it cost you at least 10% more than it did 12 months ago. So that's causing a lot of difficulty. Obviously materials are more expensive, but also we see wages rising rapidly also, and there's competition for talent. This week, I've got two of my older guys that both have to have surgery in the next 6 weeks. And it's just the aging of the workforce is real. These guys are each running jobs, and now I've got to promote younger people that might not be as skilled to do that. So that's practically how it's happening. And there's not the younger guys in the field. We had two of the youngest guys that we had in the field decided to leave us to start their own little business. So that's great. I'm all for entrepreneurship. I wish they'd given me more than like Friday at 4:15 and that was their last day. So they didn't end that well, but still, so that's kind of a microcosm what's going on. It's pretty frothy in the market. And frankly, I see some contractors and subcontractors that can't bear a 10% increase in costs, that they bid and under contract for work at a certain price. And darn, it costs you 10% more than it did 12 months ago. That doesn't lead to success. So.
Now you hit two things that I've talked about for a while. One is the aging workforce. It's happened. It's happened that the baby boomers are leaving. And I used to quote a number, and it may be different now, but about 10,000 people every day turn 65. Every day, another 10,000 people turn 65. And so some of these jobs, especially talking about skilled trade, physically, people carry on, even if financially they need to, can they do it? So that's one end. The other end is, I'm a baby boomer, and, I did 30 years at Dominion, and, a lot of baby boomers did a whole bunch of years at a company. And you talked about some of your younger folks leaving. All the data says that they're going to have many jobs. They're not going to stay in one place. They're not going to do 30 years. And there are a lot of reasons for that. The companies don't have pensions, and this generation want to be president by the time they are 28, right? Okay, so they're not going to be there. So you're going to have a retention issue on the lower end, retaining people, and then you're just going to have a knowledge retention issue on the other end with people with experience leaving. So. Any other comments on Ed's? Okay, Suzanne? You're still on mute.
Yeah, here we go. All right. First of all, I want to thank George and David and members of the CTE staff for giving me this opportunity. I have enjoyed this. It's been quite an honor to serve on this committee in a different capacity. I stepped out of my comfort zone. But I appreciate the opportunity. I've learned a lot. But I also want to encourage the committee, as you have done over the course of the time that I've served on a committee, to always remember the value that the arts can bring to any career. Just because of the way an artist has to think. And when I speak artist, I speak musician, I speak photographer, I speak any type of creative person. Because of how we have to think as artists and musicians, often we can help intersect in all these different areas in CTE. So I appreciate the committee's support, and I encourage you to continue to bring in other people like me, artists, musicians, and those of us who are the creative types, because we are going to rule the world one day. So thank you for the opportunity, and thank you, George, for being supportive and always making sure we have the information that we need to be valuable to the work that we do, because what we're doing is very important. So I hope you all have a great summer.
I thank you for your
I'll give you the keys to drive if you'd like to rule the world. So.
All right, thank you for your service and support for the CTE and for the students that we are trying to help here. Well, any other comments for Suzanne? Okay, Tamika?
It's hard to follow behind Suzanne with ruling the world and all that, that she just presented. But I will do it. It has been a pleasure for these past 6 years. I didn't know what I would be doing on this committee. And so for those of y'all who are new to the committee, you're like, you want to find out where your place is and if your voice is really needed. It really is. I'm glad that the committee is going to go in the direction of working with subcommittees and have specific things to be focused on to do work and not just come together to receive information, but to actually, do some work too, because there's so much that we can offer the education department with our background and letting them know what is out there and why it's important and where the industries are going, because they need that insight from us. So I do appreciate the work of this committee and those of you who are continuing to go on. Thank you so much, George, for all your leadership during my tenure here. I came in with you and Lolita, and Lolita was a huge force for CTE, but she didn't, but she didn't do it alone. You were always right there with her. And so I do appreciate your continued leadership as well. So healthcare wise, we are opening up, not just at UVA, but for most of the schools in the Commonwealth, we are going to have more in-person learning. And some schools are going to still have a hybrid. Really, it's driven too with the faculty. Some faculty are like, I am not coming back into the classroom just yet with, a full 100+ students yet. So that is driving some of the need to not make everybody come back 100% in person. But with the in-person return for teaching, beginning in the fall, which is August for most schools, it's the requirement for the vaccination. Students, faculty, and staff who will be physically coming in person will have to show that they have had these vaccines, both, not just starting them, but they're completed. Most have a deadline of July 1st, so that way it gives people time to process, the student health offices to process. I do expect some kickback from students. I mean, they can give exceptional reasons, and and when they do, for faculty, staff, and students, they will have to have documentation, and they will have to comply with CDC's guidelines that say if you're not fully vaccinated that you have to wear your mask. I don't foresee faculty asking for this information. I think it's it's going to be house where it is, and just like with the state and a lot of the other states outside of us, it's this honor system, which, to me is like, what is that? But again, that's just my personal opinion. You really can't check that. And who's walking around? I don't walk around with my vaccination card either. So, but anyway, that's what's happening in higher ed. Of course, with healthcare, we've been working with this already over 1.5 years. So for the healthcare majors, they're back out there. They've been working with patients, and you just do all the precautions that you would do. We just follow everybody's guidelines to tell us what to do. Any questions?
I don't have a question, but I do walk around with my vaccination card. It's in my phone.
You would. I can see you doing
that
also
too.
Yeah, I do have the mask, but I just don't think about that card. Actually, I don't even know where my little card is. I don't know if it's in one of the, as women, we change our purses, and I know I had it in a purse, but it's always like, which purse is it? And so, yeah, I did print a big sheet out to put in so if you lose your little card, you can go into the portal and get the, print it out. And like, for me, I put like 3 copies in the file cabinet. So that way, if I need it, which I know I will for, wherever, for whatever work purposes that I may need to do. Yeah.
All right. Thank you for your service again to the board. I got a lot from your conversation and input, so I appreciate all that. Sharon?
Hi again, everybody. I don't know if I can share content with you today, but I'm going to try. So let me just see if I can share my screen with y'all. I wanted to share our STEM page. Can you all hear me?
We hear you, but we don't see your screen.
Oh, okay. I'm just going to look at my screen then while I talk with you all. But we have a STEM page at VDOT, and I just wanted to highlight a few things on it today. We have some loaner kits coming late this spring, but we're going to have our kits available for 3 STEM programs. Let's see, technical drawing, transportation, sensors, and robotics. So we're going to have those available for loan. And then we're going to have some PBS Build It type bridge programs that are available for loan too. Also nanosonics and something for resources, teachers, and mentors. But our page, let's see, if you Google VDOT and STEM, you'll come up to our STEM outreach page, which describes all this, our bridge building competitions, education and training, and gives us some just some connections that you can click on if you're interested in STEM or careers at VDOT. And then some of our programs for middle and high schoolers. But we do have some unique programs, and that's all I have today. I was going to see if I could show you all that STEM page, but that's all I have today. And I'll be interested in working on the subcommittee. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Sharon. Any questions, comments for Sharon? Okay, I'll be quick and short here. I'm rolling off also. And I was intentional about getting on this advisory committee and as part of my job, but as part of my passion too. And so I campaigned to get on it and got on it and enjoyed the whole 6 years. Seemed like it went by quickly. And like you, Tamika, is back with Lolita and George. And I've enjoyed it along the way and seen other folks come on and roll off. I've gotten to meet and know more people in this space. And while I've retired from Dominion, I haven't retired from living. So I'm moving on to Goodwill. I was just enticed to become a board member for them, and primarily for their workforce activities that they use, that they're involved in. And so it's still a continuation of what I'm doing here. I'm also on the Capital Regional Workforce Board, which is also working with workforce development and placement and skills and all that. So it's just a continuation of what I've been doing, and I'll continue to do that until either I'm too old or that I move to Florida where I want to move. So I've enjoyed it, and thank you for having me to be a part of this. And with that, I take it to Dr. Long. You can give us all your knowledge, which is always great to hear.
Well, I'm not sure I have a lot of it right now, but I'll share what I have. And Kevin, I'll send you a report on what I'm going to say, so you don't have to worry about trying to keep it down, since I have a tendency to talk kind of fast. So anyway, the Virginia Association for Career and Technical Education continues to promote the opportunities for students statewide. Our local CTE programs continue to network with local businesses and industry partners to expand those opportunities. And I think all of you are well aware of that in the industry. And for these students to have work-based learning opportunities. David mentioned workforce development, and we know that if students have work-based learning opportunities in high school and going forward, how that can enhance their opportunities in the workforce. Work-based learning is an integral component of career and technical education for all students, and it provides those technical skills and academic enhancements regardless of what the students' career plans are, whether they're going to the 4-year university, 2-year associate degree, or credentialing, or directly to the workforce. So there's opportunities there for them to be quite involved. We are appreciative of the efforts of the Virginia Department of Education to hire work-based learning coordinators and a coordinator and work-based learning regional coordinators. And this will help expand those opportunities, but it will also highlight the need for work-based learning coordinators in the local school divisions. And going forward, many school divisions are offering CTE programs and increased skill attainment during summer school, particularly extended opportunities for students that missed some in-person instruction during this past school year, and they need those hands-on opportunities in that environment. So there are several school divisions, if not almost all, are offering some type of summer school for CTE this summer. We know that CTE is always a change agent because we have changed and updated curriculum depending on workforce needs and what our students need to be qualified in the workforce. And with this, we know that with this past year, the delivery of CTE is going to be changed forever. We have, I think all educators have realized we will never go back doing what we used to do in the classroom as far as instructional delivery, but we will change that as well. And I agree with Suzanne that we have opportunities for all students in CTE. Our creative artistic students, our special needs students, our AP students, advanced studies diploma students, standard diploma students. I think if we look at the scope and sequence of our CTE curriculum in Virginia, you're going to find that there is an opportunity for all students there to grow and to be creative in what they're doing and discover where they want to go in whatever way. Virginia ACTE will continue our advocacy efforts going forward with our policymakers. On our website is the issues and solutions document for 2020-2021, and we're in the process of updating that and changing that. So we have some policy statements that we will share with the community as well as with policymakers, with state school board members, with stakeholders that we will want them to support these. If you have feedback that you would like to provide for this issues and solutions document, if you could get those to me by June 20th. And if you go to our website, you'll see what we worked on this year in our policy efforts. And if you have feedback on that, please send it to me and we'll be glad to review those. We will continue to build that awareness of what CTE can offer across the state, as I said, to all students, but also to business and industry, as well as to encourage our parents to realize that CTE is such an expanded program and what it can offer for any student. We're sharing opportunities for our teachers for professional development this summer with what's out there from our other professional organizations. We hope that they will take and encourage them to take advantage of this because, as I said, I think we've realized this year that we will never go back to, I won't say we'll never go back, we won't teach everything as we once did. We're in this state of change because we were forced into it by the pandemic. And I think going forward, we'll see a lot of change in being innovative in our instructional and education delivery. I did announce to you last month that I'd be retiring June 30th. However, it looks like I may stay on a few more months as no one wants this job. So anyway, we're still arm twisting and recruiting out there for someone who is interested in being executive director for the Virginia Association for Career and Technical Education. So until we get that person in place and make the transition, you'll see me around for a little bit. So I guess I'm like you, Drexel, you know, I still have to live a little bit. Thank you. Any questions? You're on mute, Drexel.
I said great report as usual. And I'm kind of glad, I'm not sure if you are, but I'm kind of glad that you're going to be around for a couple more months. I think you're a great resource for this committee and for the state and all. And so stay around as long as you can. Any questions or comment for Dr. Long? Okay. So next on the agenda would, the chairperson for the advisory committee, currently Stuart Harris is the chairperson, but he's in the same boat as I am. He's reached the end of his second term, so he's rolling off. And so I don't know the exact process, but I'll let George kind of talk about that position.
Thank you, Drexel. As Drexel mentioned, Stuart Harris will complete on June 30th his second 3-year term. There is no specific annual date for the chair of the committee to serve. In Stuart's case, he did serve as chair for multiple years. And given the fact that this would be his final group meeting, but term not really ending until June 30th, we need to look at the incoming chair, which would be a beginning term on July 1. As William indicated, there are 4 members that will be in that immediate cohort, and we need you to now have some discussion around which member would be our members, which would be willing to serve as chair effective July 1. So Drexel would like to open the discussion to member interests in serving as chair, and then on to action on those comments.
So I had to step away. We have someone coming for repair our bathroom, but so I heard you say I would open the discussion.
Yeah.
So I think, the people who are left, and I don't know if there's anyone that's left who's not on the call, but I think all of you have, done a great job, and all of you could serve as a chairperson. I think the added duties are not much more, right? It's primarily prepping for this meeting and leading this meeting, and then actually, leading the charge on some things. So I don't, is there anyone who is dying to take over this role that we have to, but anyway, any comments on the role as chairperson?
Can we just go ahead and nominate folks?
That works in the past. So is there anyone who wants to self-nominate?
Do we need to ask their permission before we nominate them?
Well, if we nominate them, but if there's someone who wants to self-nominate, that would be implied that they give permission. So is there any self-nominations? Okay. So I don't remember how we did it when Stewart was elected. And so we're doing it here now. And so if anyone wants to nominate someone, and that person will have an opportunity to kind of respond and decide whether it's appropriate for them at this time. So is there any nomination of anyone?
I'd like to go ahead and nominate Dr. Sakina Stevens.
Okay.
And
Second.
see what she thinks about that.
Okay.
Well, thank you for the nomination. Can I just have a rundown of the commitment and the responsibilities?
So George, can you run through that?
The core responsibilities would include serving as chair of the committee and being the direct liaison to the State Board of Education. An example would be the action of the committee taken today, that at some point in this next year, and probably working also with Catherine, the two of you would give leadership in a presentation to the Board of Education on maritime, as an example, or an update on the action of the subcommittees, in which staff, David and I would be active in the preparation of those materials for you, and to serve as point of contact as any other topics might come up during the year. But largely, David and I serve as the staff to the chair to make certain that things happen.
I'll accept the nomination.
Can I add
On
something
mute,
to it?
and I was about to encourage you to do it even more, but you didn't even have to hear that.
Can we also nominate Lauren as the vice chairman that you've done for Stewart?
Mm-hmm.
So I think at one point, George, correct me if I'm wrong, I was the vice chair and Stewart was the chair. And I was about to say, having to speak before the Board of Education, that was kind of a privilege, really, because Stewart and I had that opportunity to talk about the profile of a Virginia graduate, I believe, and speak to the Board of Education about that. So I think you're going to have fun. I think you'll enjoy it. So we have two nominations, I believe. One is that Dr. Stevens become the chair, and Lauren, I heard your name, but did you want to respond or have questions about that role?
I definitely, I think I would need, because I'm pretty stretched out right now. So I think I would need a similar description as to what George gave for the vice chair role. I was also going to ask Dr. Stevens if she would be nominated for the chair. So I'm glad that Sharon spoke up and asked that before I did.
The core responsibility, Lauren, would be to serve in the absence of the chair. The scope of work in a day-to-day context would really depend on the initiatives that evolve during the course of the year.
Okay. So my main objective then is to make sure that Dr. Stevens is healthy then, right? So that she's always available.
Yes, sir. As we see today in Drexel's leadership, in the absence of the chair.
Yeah, all right, I'll accept that then.
And just for data point, on my last meeting, this is the first time I had to step in and do this. So, so Dr. Stevens will, if you keep her healthy, she will carry the load. Okay, so do we need to vote on that, or
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion that on the floor that Dr. Stevens serve as the chair of the CTE Advisory Committee, and that Lauren Seidel serve as a vice chair until further notice. So do I get a
Second.
Did I get that motion and a second?
I'm seconding before I motion. I'm sorry. I motion that Sakina Stevens and Lauren, wait, I gotta find Lauren's last name. Sodell will serve as chair and vice chair for this committee. Is that?
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, congratulations and thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, no problem. We have a little time, so not that we want to use it all up. George, year-end milestones, is that something we want to come back to, or do we want to go back to your update from the department?
I would share maybe 5 points as we look at the end of the year. One being the Perkins 5 plan and review from local school divisions across the Commonwealth. 2, the allocation of occupational preparation and adult education funding. 3, coordinator for work-based learning. 4, end of year state funding for CTE identified in the General Assembly budget. And finally, summer conferences. Annually, school divisions are required by April 30th to prepare and submit their next year proposal for use of Perkins allocation of funds. And all school divisions have submitted those plans, and staff is currently in the process of reviewing them to ensure that they are substantially approvable by July 1, so that federal funds continue to move smoothly. And that is for the 132 school divisions. We would reference that a merger of Covington City and Allegheny County is underway and is pretending in gear, I would say, I'm sorry, to become effective with the 22-23 school year, which would move us from 132 to 131 school divisions. And so in the submission of the April 30th, 22 Perkins plans, we are anticipating one combined plan from Covington City and Allegheny County. Annually at the end of each school year, based on funds available from the categorical CTE funding in the state budget, which is a little bit over $12 million this year. Those funds are allocated to school divisions. And we are in the process now of preparing the superintendent's memo to be released on the last Friday of this month, identifying those funds. We are verifying the final 3 school divisions in which we needed to have confirmation around. But there is 2 key funding streams for CTE at the state level in the Perkins arena. One is the federal funding, which is Perkins 5 funding, and that funding currently is $28.7 million, and the state funding, which is in various categories, specifically in 2 areas, one being equipment and the other being industry certification. We were able this year, based on submissions from school divisions, to expend all funding in the area of certification. We have found that due to the pandemic and the challenges of school divisions, that there was a balance of funds in their expenditures pertaining to industry certification. So that did prove to be a challenge, and we will certainly hope that as we continue to transition to a degree of normalcy, that we would be able to utilize all of those funds going forward. So certainly to the work of Dr. Long, encouraging school divisions to look at strategies to, under the current pandemic-related challenges, encouraging CTE administrators to identify ways to ensure that students are provided opportunities to earn industry credentials would be most helpful. And then finally, 2 points with David's leadership, we are preparing for the second round of interviews to fill the coordinator for work-based learning, leadership, and hopefully by July 1 or soon into the beginning of the fiscal year, we will be able to announce the coordinator for that unit. And as reported earlier, we do have 3 specialists on board, and the intent is that soon into the first quarter of the new year, that we will be advertising for 3 additional regional specialists, which will enable us to specifically provide services in 6 of the 8 regions, but the assignment of those 6 specialists will be such that all 8 regions are covered. And then finally, all of the program area specialists are interacting with their professional organizations in terms of summer conferences. So with that, Mr. Chair, those are key highlights from the department. Also, as we know, normally with this meeting, it would be on the front door of the annual Creating Excellence Awards program, which was a face-to-face program. We did release today the virtual presentation of Creating Excellence Awards, and would like to present the first few minutes of that presentation to the committee at this time, and found on the CTE web page on the DOE site, and also on the CTE Center page is a link to the 2021 Creating Excellence Awards program. So at this point, we would show you the first few minutes of that presentation. Good afternoon. I am George Wilcox, Director of Operations and Accountability in the Office of Career, Technical, and Adult Education at the Virginia Department of Education. It is a pleasure to host the 2021 CTE Creating Excellence Awards. The Creating Excellence Awards program is a partnership between the Virginia Department of Education and the Virginia Community College System. It highlights excellence at the local, regional, and state level. The Virginia Community College System and the Virginia Department of Education will present secondary and post-secondary awards in 3 categories: advisory committees, business and industry partnerships, and career and technical education programs. I would like to invite Dr. David Eshelman to announce the first category of awards.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. David Eshelman. I am the Director of Workforce Development and Initiatives for the Virginia Department of Education in the Office of Career, Technical, and Adult Education. It is our honor to recognize the following members for their distinguished service as a member of the Virginia CTE Advisory Committee. To begin with, Tamika Dowling, representing the Health Science Pathway. Drexel Harris, representing the Energy Cluster. Stuart Harris Jr., representing the Manufacturing Career Cluster. Suzanne Mallory Parker, representing Arts, AV, Technology, and Communications. Thank you for your contributions. I would like to invite John Mahoney to introduce the next part of the program.
Good afternoon. My name is John Mahoney. I'm the Perkins Act Specialist at the Virginia Community College System Office, and it's my honor and a great pleasure to introduce the post-secondary CTE State Award winners by category. The first category is the Advisory Committee Award. It's my honor to present this award to the Go Tech Advisory Committee, nominated by Danville Community College. Danville Community College Great Opportunities in Technology and Engineering Careers, or Go Tech Board, is a collaboration between 21 regional K-12 higher education and private sector and industry representatives. The goal of Go Tech is to develop talent pipelines that align with workforce development needs through sector partnerships, career pathways, and recruitment. The Go Tech program begins by engaging middle school students in 5 career areas: precision machining, welding, information technology and cybersecurity, robotics, automation, mechatronics, and advanced materials. This continues to high school and through dual enrollment offerings and progresses to higher education opportunities with the associate's and bachelor's degree options, as well as capstone programs. Congratulations, Go Tech and Danville. The next category is the Post-Secondary Business and Industry Partnership Award. This year's award goes to Train Technologies, nominated by Southside Virginia Community College. The partnership between Train Technologies and Southside Virginia Community College has many benefits, including providing professional advice and guidance on the remodeling of a classroom and lab, representation on committees, equipment donations, support in recruitment and public relations efforts, and interviews for employment provided to the graduates of the dual enrollment program. It has also allowed the college to seek ESCO Institute certifications for 2 of their locations. Congratulations to Train Technologies and Southside. The final presentation is the Post-Secondary CTE Program Award. It's presented to Industry 4.0, nominated by Patrick Henry Community College. Patrick Henry Community College offers all 3 levels of the Industry 4.0 training in their certificate and associate's degree program. The training is offered as workforce certificate programming, fully articulated to academic credit. Patrick Henry Community College is a national coalition of certification centers, or NC3 leadership school, and the first NC3 FESCO didactic center of excellence in the advanced manufacturing Industry 4.0 sector. Since its inception in 2018, 185 students have earned 912 certifications. The training provided has also been integral to the community's successful recruitment of advanced manufacturers. Congratulations, Industry 4.0 and Patrick Henry. Now, I would like to invite David Eshelman to introduce the next part of the program.
Thank you, John. I'm honored to introduce the regional and state awards for the secondary level advisory committee. The first award category to be recognized is the secondary advisory committee. The advisory committee plays an important role in CTE. They advise school divisions on the design, development, operations, and evaluation of CTE programs. They help ensure that program offerings reflect the needs of the workplace. And they help ensure that students graduate with the academic, employability, and technical skills necessary for success in post-secondary education and careers. On behalf of the Virginia Advisory Committee for CTE, I am proud to present the Region 5 Award winner. The Criminal Justice Advisory Committee, nominated by Lynchburg City Public Schools. For the past 4 years, members of the Lynchburg City Public Schools Criminal Justice Program Advisory Committee have hosted a mock hiring process with an oral review board for criminal justice 2 students. Advisory members support the program by recruiting students for positions in their departments and promote the program by assisting with promotional videos aimed at middle and high school students. Congratulations. I am pleased to announce that the state winner for the Secondary Advisory Committee Award is Lynchburg City Public Schools Criminal Justice Advisory Committee. Congratulations. At this time, I will introduce the Secondary Business and Industry Partnership Award recipients. Let's start with Business and Industry Partnerships in Region 1. This award is presented to the Entrepreneur Game nominated by Chesterfield County Public Schools. This partnership between Chesterfield County Public Schools and the Entrepreneur Game creator, Mr. Elliott Eddy, served as an evidence-based project for CTE students. Mr. Eddy led sessions that helped students create business plans. Topics covered included idea generation, marketing, finances, organizational structure, work ethic, how to write and communicate an elevator pitch, and business law. Congratulations. Next, the Region 2 Business and Industry Partnership Award is presented to Old Dominion University College of Engineering, nominated by Norfolk City Public Schools. The Computer Science Principles and Cybersecurity Pathway for CTE is a partnership between Norfolk City Public Schools and the College of Engineering at Old Dominion University. It is focused on expanding access to STEM education, specifically computer science and cybersecurity, for underrepresented high school students. These goals were met through focused mentorship for cybersecurity students, focused professional development for cybersecurity and computer science teachers, and the development of curriculum supplements to enhance student success in these courses. Congratulations. Next, the Region 5 Business and Industry Partnership Award is presented to Heritage Hall, nominated by Campbell County Public Schools. Heritage Hall has worked collaboratively with the Campbell County Technical Center to establish protocols for clinical experiences for nurse aid students during the pandemic. Heritage Hall offered clinical in all-day working format, enabling students to complete the 40-hour requirement in 1 week and making them eligible to take the National Nurse Aid Examination. Congratulations. Finally, I am pleased to announce the state winner for the Secondary Business and Industry Partnership category. Old Dominion University College of Engineering, nominated by Norfolk City Public Schools. Congratulations. Now I would like to call on Dr. Anthony Williams to introduce the winners for the final category.
Okay, thank you. We would encourage the committee at your convenience to watch the remaining presentations of the Creating Excellence Award. But special thanks again to the 4 members of this committee that have completed 6 years. We truly appreciate your leadership. At the upcoming State Board of Education meeting this month, new members will be confirmed to come on to the advisory committee on July 1. So again, we appreciate the leadership that has been provided. We would also point out the date for the next meeting of the committee, which is, I think, October the 14th. It is anticipated at that time, unless something changes in CDC and state guidance, that meeting will be a face-to-face meeting. with that, Mr. Chair, if there are other topics to come before the committee, hopefully you would entertain those. And
Okay.
other than that, we would yield to you for any closing comments from the committee as we end this meeting.
Okay, thank you, George, for that update and showing the presentation. And look like in the virtual world, we kept things moving and kept things going. Before we end, I'd like to offer Dr. Eshelman if he had any comments he wanted to say to the team or the group.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I appreciate your continued work on the committee, as well as each of you. Your time, your experience is of tremendous value. I've had the wonderful opportunity to experience that at the local level in 3 different school divisions, working as a CTE director, and the work that happens at the local level, at the state level, does not happen without the continued support of our business community and representatives that each of you contribute to. So 6 years, I have not been with each of you for 6 years, but I know that is a significant amount of time, and it's greatly appreciated by our entire staff. So on behalf of our entire team, thank you for your continued commitment to quality experiences for students, making connections to their future careers. It just does not happen. Looking at our instructional, as Brenda was talking about, our instructional methodologies, we know how important it is to get outside of the classroom. And that does not happen without our business community. And the experiences that we're receiving from students that have graduated and are now in the workforce, that is what they're talking about. They're talking about the experiences that they were able to have early on in high school, making those connections to workforce opportunities. So thank you on behalf of our entire team for everything that you do.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Eshelman. And I want to thank everybody again. And if there are no other comments, I will entertain a motion to adjourn and wish Madam Chair and Mr. Vice Chair success in the next few years. Do a motion to adjourn? Okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. All right, everyone be safe and take care. I appreciated the experience.
Thank you, Drexel, for everything.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
That last 3 hours. I woke up